In this video, I will give suggestions for how you could go about locking down your ideas, converting them into tangible results, and increasing your learning in the process. If you consider yourself creative but disorganized, you'll definitely want to stick around for this one. My emphasis will be on how to deal with the difficulties of this context. Let's begin with ideation as a subject. I use this term ideation to refer to the generation and usage of ideas. Ideation will be one of the big subjects I discuss on this YouTube channel. So where do ideas come from? There are two ways: top-down ideation and bottom-up ideation. In bottom-up ideation, we start with the outside world and we draw in all the details, putting together the meaning or big picture afterwards. In top-down ideation, we start in our minds with the picture and find details in the outside world that match or support that. Let me further demonstrate some of the differences between these two ideation methods. Bottom-up ideation means making lots of observations about the world and building your ideas off that. You're open to what you see and you figure out how it all fits together later. The bottom-up mindset is, what ideas can we come up with based on what is here? What do I see in the world around me and how do I make the most of that? In contrast, top-down ideation begins with what you're looking for. The top-down mindset is, what ideas are we looking for and how do we go find them? A top-down thinker would be like, here's my intention, where should I go to act on that? The big difference is that top-down thinking begins with the structure or plan, whereas in bottom-up thinking, the plan or structure emerges later. Of the two styles, bottom-up thinking is more associated with creativity and adaptability. If you're a bottom-up ideator, you may find yourself prone to disorganization. This is because your mind is associative and generates lots and lots of ideas. Anything that can potentially relate to a random thought you had becomes an idea. Bottom-up thinkers also tend to not like rigid structures that make their thinking feel boxed in. Creativity tends to be associated with this out-of-the-box, bottom-up thinking. Creative people are more observant of the world around them and more willing to entertain random ideas. They're more easily able to connect the dots between disparate ideas because they're always looking at all the dots everywhere. Top-down thinkers can lose a lot of these connect-the-dots insights because they'll shut out their view of the dots in the pursuit of their preconceived structure. Being able to endlessly connect the dots is a great advantage for bottom-up thinkers. It's a where do you even start? There are so many picks kind of experience, like being in an ideation buffet. It's a good kind of problem to have. Unfortunately, bottom-up thinking can fall prey to disorganization if the structure doesn't properly emerge. Studies have shown that creativity correlates with disorganization, and this is part of why. The problem with bottom-up ideators can be that there's no filter, no sense of distinguishing what is important and why. The ideas are endlessly sparking off, leaving loose ends everywhere. The feeling of the idea sparking off can be so compelling that the ideator forgets to actually pause and evaluate the ideas. It's like being stuck in a brainstorm mode with no revise mode. This organization happens when more and more bottom-up details are consumed and there is not enough of fitting them together. Imagine building a Lego fort. A sustainable structure needs to be in place. One Lego has to be built on top of another. In the same way, foundational ideas have to be in place as a knowledge scaffolding. Then complex, valuable, high-level ideas can be built on top. We wouldn't be able to build this Lego fort if the Legos were scattered around everywhere. The disorganized creator doesn't make it beyond surface level details, and that's like this scattered Legos experience. He or she doesn't put the Legos together. This is the essence of the disorganization problem, an overwhelming number of details that haven't been assimilated. Because you didn't begin with a structure and likely aren't as used to thinking of information in terms of structure, it can become a challenge to get value out of these ideas that are flying around everywhere. Your ideas become like a train that has gone off the tracks. You aren't able to direct them where you want to go. This brings me to my next point, which is how to learn, remember, and utilize ideas in such a way that they are chunked into self-contained values. The generative effect, a term popularized by neuroscientist Annie-Lauren Lecomte, states that creating our own content based on our learnings improves our understanding and memory. Scientists are debating what the causes of the generative effect are. I think it makes sense simply from a common sense standpoint. It's known that working with material you are learning does more for your learning than just reading it over and over or passively absorbing it. Essentially, this is the principle of active engagement. This principle is applied, for example, when you are note making. That is, when you are rewriting content in your own words, picking out the points most important to you. Contrast this with note taking, which often isn't helpful for learning. It can be just mindlessly copying the author's words, writing down everything indiscriminate to what's personally important to you. When you invest effort into learning, your brain remembers. This leads to the idea of always be creating, which I abbreviate ABC. This emphasizes that we should not just be passive consumers of information. We should be looking to create material as often as we can to better internalize our learning. This principle can be extrapolated beyond the context of consumers versus creators when learning outside ideas. It also applies when generating our own ideas bottom up. It's especially helpful in bottom up ideation because of it lacking structure. In the process of creating our own material, we play around with structure. This act of making structure deepens our understanding and retention of our ideas. This is why working with ill-structured material does more for your learning than consuming a top-down structure already laid out by another creator. I talk about this concept in one of my YouTube shorts. If you have a lot of bottom-up details from a lot of different sources, it forces you to work to put together that structure. You have to unpack how the ideas relate to one another in order to formulate the structure. This act of coming up with the structure on your own greatly reinforces your learning. This remains true when the bottom-up details are from your own thoughts and observations of the world. Each time you make one of your ABC creations, it gives you better material with which to make structure in the future, kind of like curdling your cheese before you're ready to extract it. Your existing creations give you better vantage points for more creations. They act as springboards. In essence, this lays the groundwork for more to be built upon. It's a good makeshift strategy if you're not sure how else to structure. You're creating what can be called intermediate packets, a term Tiago Forte refers to describe these intermediate products that build into bigger products. This allows higher order structures to more easily unfold. Now that we've discussed the generation effect and ABC, let's move on to a criteria for determining which ideas to pick. When deciding what to create, I suggest giving the self-containment principle a try. Take a handful of ideas that present a value in a self-contained way. Self-contained ideas answer the questions, what is useful or valuable about this, and under what circumstances or contexts are these ideas applied? That's it. That's all that's required. Just what is the value and where and how do I use it? In doing this, you're able to find the difference between what you thought is important and what's actually important. You distinguish between a cool feeling you had in the moment versus a clear use case that you can articulate to someone else. You want to ask yourself, does it pass the self-containment test? Can you answer the above questions? Chances are, if you don't know what kind of context your ideas are used in, or you don't know what they're used for, then they don't have an immediately applicable value. The advantage of creating short, self-contained structures is that they do not require having the whole structure figured out. For example, you can create a short video or article on one specific self-contained thing. It doesn't require the higher order structure of having, say, an entire textbook figured out. Doing this creative structure is what figures that structure out if you choose to go that route eventually. By creating lots of small self-contained pieces, you curdle your ideas into something that can eventually be put towards a higher work such as that. Creating in this way supports easily rolling out bottom-up ideas. There's a minimum of friction of having to figure out the structure. It's just your bottom-up idea followed by the presentation of it, and doing that lots and lots of times. In this way, you can generate value from consistently creating while also developing your knowledge structure at the same time. It doesn't require already having it all figured out before you're ready to produce value. Creating content forces you to slow it down and self-contain the value of your ideas, rather than that endless loop of generating more and more ideas sparking off. It forces you to consider what is significant about these ideas. Why am I packaging them up in this way? How are they actionable straight away? In doing so, you get more in tune with what I call the feeling of value. This is the feeling that motivates you to seek out and to create value. It's what makes you feel good about your ideas, that they have some worth or actionability, or that they are some kind of takeaway that makes an impact. We want to make this feeling into a compelling feeling that balances out the feeling of sparking off more and more ideas. That novelty effect, that urge to spark off more and more ideas nonstop, is motivated by FOMO, which is a fear of missing out. We want to make this shift from fear to value. Then there will be an optimal mix of generating ideas as well as using them. Creating content doesn't require an elaborate, extensive, huge list of ideas at your disposal. It takes just a good reasoning, synthesizing together a handful of ideas to put together something meaningful. You want to draw a through line, that is, to reach the valuable conclusion at the end of this series of ideas. For example, for this script, my handful of ideas was bottom-up ideation, the generative effects, and the self-containment principle. That's it, just 1, 2, 3. Therefore, the conclusion, here's the takeaway. Any of these things individually might have just been interesting observations. It's the fact that they are laid out in this sequence with this reasoning and explanation that we have an actionable conclusion. This conclusion is chunk out your bottom up thinking into self contained packages in order to organize them into valuable and actionable ideas. So there you have it. There's your simple and actionable plan for breaking down your disorganized content creation into something manageable. We now know what bottom-up ideation is and how to go about handling that if this is your ideation style. We know that to improve our understanding of the material, we must create it ourselves. This is the generation effect. Although we may not have a structure in mind for our material and how to lock that in, we can figure out that structure in the process of our content creation. Mediums such as videos and articles allow us to start producing from where we're at, in this bottom-up place. It doesn't require having the whole structure in place as if you were writing a book. We want to use short-form creations to start putting together our content into intermediate packets. These will become the scaffolding that build into our structure in the future. To help us prioritize which ideas to pick, try applying the self-containment principle. Group together a handful of ideas that present value in a self-contained way. This is a module whose value is self-evident without having to reference various other concepts and structures. You only need to consider what is valuable about this and how do I apply it. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. I discuss strategies for ideation and organization on my channel. Together, let's organize our minds and our systems.